Hello and welcome to Kriegel Gaming Network. This is your friendly neighborhood Kriegel. Was playing New World yesterday, and one of the uh, part of the community was asking about my reshade. So I told him I would put together a video detailing how to apply a reshade to New World, although this would apply to any game, and I'll show you some of my reshade presets. So the first thing you want to do is head over to reshade.me and download the reshade. Get the latest one, and then I usually run it out of downloads, and you can run it as administrator. And then if you don't know the directory of your game or you can't find it, one easy way is to bring up Steam and navigate to that game. Right click, or the cog. I was looking for the right click. It's on the list over here. So you can do it one of two ways. You can either right click here and go to properties and go to local files and browse, or you can hit the cog and same thing, manage, browse local files, and then that's going to show you the directory path to that game. So you could copy that directory path, go back over to Reshade, paste the directory path, or browse and paste the directory path here, hit go. Want to probably select the bin64, the New World executable. We'll see about that. Usually it's the executable and not the launcher. Or it may populate in here as well. So there's the executable. Either way, you hit next. Let's put it on DirectX 11 and 12. Hit next. I already have it installed, so I'll just hit update. Actually, we'll hit modify, and I think that's going to replicate what you'll see. So then it asks you if you've got a preset INI. You may not the first time you ever set up Reshade, although I recommend keeping a vanilla INI in your downloads folder, and you can always point to the vanilla INI and then tweak the settings and save it as a new INI in the game, in the Reshade. That's part of setup, which I'll show you. For now, I'm just going to go with the INI that I've already created. So you can either skip this step for now, or if you've got an existing INI, I would copy that over to a directory that's not going to be a duplicate, and then just use that as a vanilla template. So hit next, and a lot of these is your discretion. Ones that I recommend are the Sweet FX, FX shaders, the legacy effects. And why don't we go ahead and get Lightroom? We'll get a few of these. Some of this is new since the last time. Reshade's recently had a nice update that's introduced a lot of good stuff. It doesn't matter however many of these you want to try. Just grab the ones that sound good to you. There's a theory behind setting up your reshade. There's a process, and so once you learn that theory and process, you can pretty much set up reshade on any of your games. Hit next, it'll download all of those packs. Hit next, goes out and grabs them, updates the INI file accordingly, populates the root directory of your game, points all of that to the executable, and then essentially acts as an overlay over the top of your executable. You hit finish, and what you'll notice is if you go back into your game directory, in the same path as your executable, you'll see the pre-configured DLLs and INIs that you just custom built. So let's launch the game and begin to talk about how to set up the Reshade so that it looks good on yours. I'm playing on an Alienware 3400 DW curved, so my settings are going to be different than yours, unless you have that exact monitor, but you should be able to get a pretty decent idea of how to do it after this video. So you'll see that it's compiling the effects. The first time it compiles, it's going to take a moment, because it's having to write all of those DLLs, but that didn't take too long at all. So we'll get logged in here and then fiddle with the Reshade. You notice that my game probably looks a little more crisp than yours. That's because we already have the Reshade activated right now, and I'll show you the difference as soon as we get logged in. Depending on what you set in your Reshade settings, you may find that you may experience a loss of some frames. So you have to be careful to set up the Reshade in a way that you're not losing too many frames. So we'll get loaded in here. So Reshade is bound by default to the home key. If you hit home, it pulls up Reshade. You'll probably see a first-time tutorial. Basically what you want to do is just do the quick tutorial initialization and then get to this screen, and then you'll see probably not your custom named INI up at the top. So we want to set one. So just hit add a new preset and name it. And hit enter. And you see now this is a vanilla preset with nothing pre-configured. One thing I like to do is go over to settings right here and go down to the shortcuts. Oh, I'm sorry, it's up at the top. Shortcuts to your overlay keys. I don't run a bunch of the additional overlays, but one thing you do need is the effect toggle. I like end because it's right below home. And then if you want to put an FPS counter, it's right here, show FPS, and then you get the overlay. There are other overlays that you can add, such as frame time. It gets a little cumbersome. You can also set paths to screenshot. So you can assign the screenshot key to whatever key. I've got print screen. And then you set the path here below, and that just tells it what directory to save your game screenshots in. And then you can give some settings as far as the format. If you want high quality, go with portable network. And so you'll notice if you hit the end key, the home key, that goes away. And you hit home and it comes back. Let's go back over to the tab of home. You'll see that this is vanilla just like yours. If I go back to my other one, show you something real quick. Not Valheim. I want my new world. There it is. So those other INIs were different games that I play. Each game that you play can have its own INI. Reshade's going to reach out and find those. And so you can actually load in any game's INI file, Reshade INI, to the game you're currently playing. So I'll toggle on and off. This is on. Now that's off. I'm sorry, backwards. See, it says effects are disabled. That's how you know they're off. And then I hit it again, and they're enabled. So this is enabled. I've got a sharpener on there, so you can see it gets much more sharp. And then that's disabled. You see it gets a little hazy. It adds in a lot of the fog, and there's not quite the color depth. So then that's back on again. It's got a little bit additional bloom from what the base game has, and a little bit more sharpening and an additional anti-aliasing. And then that's off. I think the base game actually looks pretty decent. So there's not a lot to improve on. And if we keep our reshade light on this one, then that's gonna help with our frame rate. So less is more with a reshade. You don't need to go super overboard, because then you are robbing yourself of frames. And if you don't have a lot of frames to spare, you want to do your best to stay above that magic 60 frames per second, because every time you dip below 60, you're going to get the screen tearing of VSync kicking in. So we want to stay above the VSync tear, or where VSync has to kick in. So we want to try to keep our frames above 60 if we're able. So configure your reshade accordingly. So we'll toggle off this performance mode on mine. Yours probably already is off. The difference is that when you're out of performance mode, you're able to do the advanced settings for each effect. Let's just give that a moment. That's actually doing a save routine every time you toggle that on and off. So sometimes that can take a moment to load, and we don't want to go in and out of performance mode very often. When we're done setting up our reshade, that's when we'll go into performance mode and leave it be. So I think that for the sake of time, because we could easily make a 2-hour video, and maybe that's what we need to do at some point. If so, leave feedback and we'll do that, going through each one of these, because with the exception of some of the new effects that just released, I have painstakingly been through about 90% of these in the advanced settings and understand how they apply to games. So I can do that if we want to do that. But for time's sake, if you just want a nice looking lightweight reshade that matches mine, I see that it duplicated Neo Bloom because of what we did, so I'll take a look at that. But I will show you my New World preset, and then you can build yours around mine. So we've got performance mode off. Go find Neo Bloom. And I need to find out why there's 2 iterations here, because that's just because of what we just did in this tutorial video. It is doing it twice. So I'm just going to deselect that one. If you go down here and just select anything, if you hit active to top, it's going to pull everything you've selected down here to the top. Right? So it loads in reverse order of what you think. So it's like Magic the Gathering, first in, last out. So top is the last thing to get loaded. So you would want to think about it from the bottom going up is your load order, how it stacks in. So because load order matters, you wouldn't want to over sharpen or do a haze or a dithering or a pixelation and then sharpen that, because you're making your anti-aliasing work twice as hard. So for the sake of confusion, we'll start down here and work our way up. So Luma Sharpen is one of my favorites. What that does, and depending on the size of your monitor, you may want to change from normal to wide. I like the wide. In Luma Sharpen, that's really how we're going to crisp up a game. if we hit the show sharpening pattern, we're able to see what's being sharpened. So then if we take our sharpening limit, it acts as a limiter. We can tell it where we want that limit to be, right? And then if we take the strength, that's how much in the environment is getting sharpened. That's the higher you go, that gets very heavy on frames. So really it's kind of like adjusting your gamma. You want it where it's just coming in to a visible image. So somewhere in there, right? And then you can sharpen to taste. So if you don't like that, you don't have to use the pattern to set it where you want. You can actually do it in real time. Now I've got frames to spare so I can go more sharp. And so we sharpen first. Then we anti-alias. Again, there is a diagnostic debug mode for that. So just scroll down to debug output, and it will show you what you're anti-aliasing. So we can see here we're actually getting into some of the letters in chat, and we can see how it's dithering in the trees. And so everywhere you see the red is the most extreme and then green is milder, that's what's getting a lot of edge sharpening happening on moving objects. You can just look at my settings, and then if you want to adjust yours, small adjustments at a time. And then if you mess up too much, just right click on a line and go back to reset to default. And so the best way to tune the anti-aliasing is actually to go into this mode where you can see the green and the red lines, and then you can adjust your thresholds to your liking. I'm not going to mess with mine because I like it where it's at, but just play with that. Ambient light is a lot of fun. It's hard to show you during the day. What this really is good for is when you're on a street lit city and the street lights and lamps are glowing in the windows and on the sidewalk lamps, and as you pass by you want that ambient light, almost like ray tracing, to bring the environment more to life. That's really where you're going to get some of the ambient light. You can see up in the corners that it is still giving us an effect from the sun. It's a great effect. It has a debugging mode. You'll see up here, you basically want the green bar to be just above the red bar, and you're going to do that by adjusting out your thresholds and your base intensity. And then if you want to add dirt textures onto your screen, and then lens flares, you can do that. And then also the adaptive talks about what type of light you want, whether you want a colder light or a light or a warm light. Light dependent draws from the environment and uses the color scale of the screen to determine whether it thinks, the AI thinks that you're should use warm or cold light. So it's situational. I just leave mine on warm because that's really the kind of glow that I'm going for when I want to use ambient light. Colorfulness, I was just trying to pull a little bit more color. I know this game's already super vivid, so this one, if anything, is maybe a little redundant and unnecessary. But my settings are so minute, and it was just to bring a bit of a dark curve on this monitor, so this may not apply to you too much. This is where you could add one or two additional effects here based on your liking. Maybe you want to Daltonize, maybe you want to deband or curve, or maybe you want to do a color lab. So maybe try some of those and see what you think. And then finally, you would want a bloom. This game's pretty blown out to begin with, so very careful with the bloom. But then on blend mode, I recommend screen. And then you could normalize brightness. I don't recommend that. Magic mode uses some AI prediction to do some computations. I like it, but it doesn't work on all games. And those are my bloom settings. Less is more with bloom. So that's all I've got running on New World, but I would say the key player here is that Luma Sharpen. And so then when you're done, just hit the save. That'll clean up and save your current preset. And then make sure all of your debugs are turned off. See, we still have our ambient light debug on. So let's just turn that off. Save again. And go back into performance mode. Hit our hotkey of home. And then we can toggle our effect on and off with end. And look at what a difference that does indeed make. So if you would like follow-up content, just let me know. For now, we'll keep it right there. I'll move around a little bit so you can really get an appreciation for the reshade we've got going on. You'll notice that the contrast is a little better from the colorfulness effect that we did. And so I'm getting more depth in the scene, because anytime you can draw out your shadows to be more boldly dark, but also bring your ambient light to bring more white balance into your scene, you're gonna achieve depth. And depth is going to give you better look and feel, and I think you'll appreciate adding depth to your games. So you can see how much depth we've gotten just by using the blooms and the ambient lighting. It really makes the world come to life. So good luck on your reshade. I really hope it goes well for you. And feel free to leave some feedback and questions, and I'll try to address those as I can. And shout out in the game, and we'll see you around in New World. Thanks for watching, guys.